So the terms multimedia, cross-media, and transmedia storytelling are widely used all over the world, but still we have lots of confusion about what could differentiate them. And actually there are several occasions in which people are using them as synonyms, but they are not. So let's take a look into each one of them. So let's start with multimedia. First, we have the prefix multi, which is not difficult to understand, that it means many, several, numerous. And then we have the word media. Well, there are different understandings and definitions of media itself, but I work with one definition that I think that is relevant for us, which is from Lisa Gittelman, an historian from the US, and then she basically defines media as something that involves two dimensions. So the first dimension is the understanding of media as means of communication. So it involves the physicality of it, the material aspect of it. But then she talks about a second dimension, which is related to the social and cultural aspects that are directly involved with this means of communication. So media, it's not just related to film, print media, mobile media, not just the physical means of communication, but it also involves all the relations around it, social and cultural relations around it. So multimedia. So actually the term multimedia is kind of old. It comes from the 60s. So actually in 1966, the artist Bob Goldstein in the US, in Long Island, he produced a lighting show, which was a kind of combination of light and visuals together. And at that time, to describe his artistic production, he called it multimedia. But since the 1990s, we can have multimedia being used as something to describe when we have text, audio, and visual elements together. So this started, the main example of multimedia at that time, it was the CD-ROM, when we had a physical CD that we could put on our computer, and then we could read stories, watch videos, have the sound, have the pictures, have all these elements together. So actually nowadays with the internet, basically the majority of the websites that we access today, they are multimedia because they somehow have text, they have audio and visual elements put together and presented simultaneously. So this is the idea of multimedia. And cross-media is a more recent term that started in 1999 with Big Brother. So everybody knows the Big Brother nowadays, but Big Brother as a TV format a reality TV format that started in the Netherlands in 1999, was the moment in which Paul Zazera presented this term to try to describe these elements related to having a TV show with the possibility for people to vote and decide who stays in the house, who leaves the house, and then we had all the print media with magazines, everybody talking about the show and the people inside the show, etc. So this was the context. And again, if we talk about the prefix, we have the prefix cross, which implies the idea of movement. And cross also implies the idea of intersection. So in the sense that different media platforms are somehow intersecting. But what is essential for us to understand, especially in relation to transmedia storytelling that we will talk soon, is that cross-media is a broader term that can embrace several different kinds of projects. But the main idea is that although we have in cross-media productions multiple media platforms involved, we have normally, in most of them, the repetition of content and not the expansion of content. So here we would be talking about adaptations, for example. So when we have a book and this book is transformed, is adapted to be a movie. So we have basically the same content, but they are being presented in two different media platforms. So this is the main idea of cross-media. And transmedia storytelling is much more narrowed, much more specific than cross-media, in the sense that Henry Jenkins, professor from the US, who coined the term transmedia storytelling in 2003, he defines as one of the key elements of transmedia storytelling the expansion of content. So exactly the opposite of cross-media, in the sense that when we have a transmedia story, we have the story being unfolded, being developed and growing across different media platforms. We do not have the repetition of the same content from the book in the movie, or the same content from the movie in the video game, and things like that. So this is probably the main difference between transmedia storytelling and cross-media. So transmedia involves the prefix trans, which means transcendence, which is related to the idea of going beyond. No? So a transmedia story goes beyond the several media platforms, in the sense that the story is not repeated, is not repurposed, but the story presents itself with new and relevant content in each and every media platform involved. Although we can clearly define what is cross-media, what is transmedia storytelling, actually, when we have the examples, when we have the real projects being produced, it's not that simple, because the complexity of this kind of projects that involve numerous parts spread across different media platforms, we can have things that are more complicated than just that, saying what is repeated is not transmedia storytelling, what is new is transmedia storytelling. So one classical example is Harry Potter. So Harry Potter started mainly as a cross-media project, in the sense that we had this series of books, and each book was then adapted to be a movie. But nowadays, the project expanded so much that we have much more interesting things going on inside the Harry Potter universe. So, for example, a few years ago, the author of Harry Potter came up with the Pottermore. So the Pottermore is a platform online in which she, for example, put there 100,000 new words about Harry Potter. So she had all these stories and other information about Harry Potter that she wrote but never published before. And then she made this available for the public. And this is definitely something much more connected to transmedia storytelling than to cross-media. Another example, we could think about The Lord of the Rings. So the same, we had the books were adapted into movies, but nowadays things just spread so much that we have video games, for example, with totally new perspectives and bringing new elements to the story, that it's difficult for us to say that it is still just cross-mediatic. So it's not so simple. This is still an open aspect related to the reality of multi-platform productions.